One thing with recording, if you do want to record any of your class sessions, you do have to let your students be aware and known that, yes, you are recording them. So just make a formal statement in the beginning saying, hey, we're recording the session for the students in the class who are unable to make it. So another thing before we get started formally is, yes, we had some introductions through the text chat, but one good practice when you are doing an online session is to guide students about what to do as far as testing their microphone and video. So here I have an example slide of how to connect audio, which usually minimizes any questions that students have. So again, these slides are available to you to use, repurpose, however you feel free. So today, my name is Amy Kuntz, and I have with me Marilyn Goodrich, and we are both instructional designers within Teaching and Learning with Technology, where half of our role is supporting shared programs. And today we're going to be talking about teaching and engaging students via desktop video conferencing. You might be saying, well, what is that term? It's a slight move from Adobe Connect to Zoom. Penn State is also changing the terminology from web conferencing to desktop video conferencing. So we're trying to align that accordingly. So I just want to kind of go over some housekeeping items in case you are new to Zoom. So when you are logged in, you see this initial screen, and at the bottom you have several different items. So the most important is the chat. So if you press the chat button, you get a little pop-up window where you could type in any questions at any time. And if you want to do it a little bit more formally for your students, you could have them click on participants. And then from here, they get a window on the right-hand side where they could formally raise their hand. So we want to see if you could do it. So if you click on participants, and then what I want you to do is then click on the raise hand button, which is over here. Great. So a lot of people did it. And if somebody is having trouble and wants to go over that aspect, please let me know.
Amy, I'm sorry, I get to the chat, but I'm sorry, I missed how to get to the participants. How do I do that? Sorry. Oh, right.
At the bottom, there's the bar. You might have moved it. If you click on participants,
no, I got you.
Then you have to raise your hand. So
thanks.
This is really good because it models what students raising the hand in the classroom. In Zoom, it's a little bit backwards. But if you choose a different tool, it's a lot easier as well. So there's always different ways to do certain things.
Thank you.
So going forward, today's agenda is going to cover many different aspects, but it's going to be hands-on. So with this, we're going to cover who and what, when, where, and why, how you would do desktop video conferencing, and how to engage students. So the who and what is who would come to such a gathering. So you, your students, potential guest speakers. Why would you do desktop video conferencing? We'll give you different ways and as well as different tips for each type of instruction. And then if you decide to pursue this, how would you go about doing it? So we actually have some checklists for both preparation, conducting the session, and then what to do as a follow-up. And then lastly, the bulk of today's session is going in depth to some of the tools about how to engage students. So I know some of these, you might say, what are they? But we have them gathered into 3 different skill levels. So one is a little bit easier. Pulling in whiteboard activities is a little bit more challenging. And then the more advanced is the screen share takeover and student breakout rooms. I'm all about learning by doing, so you'll actually have a chance to participate in each of these activities. So has anyone here done, and I know some people have done online webinars, has anybody taught a class or held an online session with students through Skype or FaceTime or Zoom or Adobe Connect? And if so, do you want to share your experiences?
I've done it, but as a review session for like a few students. It was a small group, like maybe 3 or 4. And basically, then I just had them together, and then as a because I made it available to the whole class as a review for the exam, but I recorded it, and so the few that showed up, I answered their questions, but it was like maybe 4 or 5, so it was pretty manageable.
Great. Anybody else wants to share? No? Okay. Well, we'll give you plenty of examples. For the who and the what, again, you could bring together students, all of your students, just a portion of them, and you could even bring in potential guest speakers. It's a real-time meeting where everybody logs on at the same time. And here is one example of a math review for tests for an online course, which I'll show as a bigger picture later on in today's session. So with Penn State, we are in a state of transition right now. I know that many people might be new to this type of teaching modality, but some people might have heard of one tool and might have questions as to, is it still going to be here? Is it going away? So I just want to quickly touch base upon this. So Zoom is what we're using today. It is available to all of Penn State. And so that is going to be the main channel of support going forward. If you have used Adobe Connect in the past, I know Matt has. So formally they did announce that it is going to be through spring 2018 and then will sunset. That is the status of Adobe Connect. And great, thank you, Robin, and great to have you, Robin and Selena. So some of the things that are available on top of Zoom is Canvas conferences. So with Canvas, there is an embedded platform called Canvas Conferences. And some of you might be saying, well, why do we purchase Zoom if we have Canvas conferences? So Canvas conferences is not as robust. It was a free tool, started about a decade ago, and they don't have as much dedicated programmers and support for that tool. So it's a little bit behind on some aspects, including video, as well as using on a Mac. So because of that, Zoom was purchased. And then if any of you are teaching through World Campus, they currently have Blackboard Collaborate. I don't know if they're going to have that going forward or not. I'm not the best person to know that aspect. And then lastly, you can actually use non-Penn State supported tools such as Google Hangout, Skype, FaceTime, and more. I know some individuals have online office hours with their students via Skype because that's something that they're more familiar with. So for purposes of today's session, we're going to be using the tool Desktop Video Conferencing as a live in-person tool where everyone is on their own computer. With the features, we'll cover all the different aspects, and if it's not available on Zoom, we'll make a little mention of that. And then again, get ready because we're going to be hands-on after we get through sprinkling some hands-on, but especially towards the end of the session. So now I'm going to pass things on to Marilyn, who's going to be talking about when, where, and why, and really why and the purpose that you would use desktop video conferencing informs the when and where. So take it away, Marilyn, and I will advance the slides.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I do have to let you know that this is one of Amy's most favorite topics. So I told her, I said, if you get a chance or if you just can't sit there anymore, just chime in because I know that she's had a lot of experience. And I know that we have some other instructional designers here today. So please feel free to add some, even if you have had some experiences where you've had some very positive things happen, but then also some barriers that you might have occurred. So please let us know in the chat or just like Amy showed you, raise your hand so that we can talk with you. So I think the main things are we really want to take a look at web conferencing in 3 different ways to actually use it. Course-wide is really, I think, something of a way to really get your course organized. Again, with web conferencing, you can do your class instruction through it. You can have those wonderful guest speakers that can't make it out to your classroom. Maybe they are on the job. What also is also nice too is that you can have these group presentations. So maybe you do have different campuses. Maybe you do have certain students that could not possibly make it to be in the class at one particular time. Maybe they had some kind of sporting event, but you can have those group presentations being done through the web conferencing, so you can make accommodations for those students so that everyone is actually included. One thing that I know faculty do enjoy doing is creating a review for exams so that students can have just a very quick study group, get some questions answered, and also make sure that they understand maybe a complex topic or idea. Also too, which maybe students don't like so much, is actually substituting class. So if there is a weather issue, or if by some chance you as an instructor have some type of conflict, that you could actually use web conferencing to record and then also have the students visit it later, or you can do it where it's synchronous. So course-wide, a lot of ways that you can manage.
I'm going to jump in here real quick, Marilyn. And
Thank
so
you.
for that last one, I know several instructors who have actually done this, but I really encourage you to put something on the syllabus as you're prepping for spring semester, saying, hey, if we have a lot of snow days, meeting up during our class time online through Zoom is a possibility, instead of doing it last minute where you might send an email the morning of, and then students might not know how to join, etc. So that is a best practice. Sometimes it's not followed, and there are some frustrated students. So if you could put that in the syllabus, and if you want some example verbiage that you could put, Marilyn and I are happy to do so for that.
Oh, thank you, Amy. Yes, I do agree. It's better to keep them aware and let them know that could be a possibility. Okay. The second way is instructor to student, which really is something, because you have classes, you're very, very busy. It's really nice to be able to work one-on-one with students, or even in small groups of students. So you can have those online office hours. You can do them one-on-one with a student, or like I said, have a very small group. So you actually are available for them because of student schedules. And I know courses sometimes land at the oddest places and times. So it really is nice for you to have the ability and the flexibility with your students, and also to just keep them very, very brief. So if you need to review a student's work, looking at maybe a quiz or an assignment, or maybe you have some type of presentation that you're having students, requiring the students to do, and there might be maybe a tricky area, you can easily go and have an appointment with the student by using web conferencing, just so that they know before they come into class or before the project actually is due, the deadline is due. And then the third way is just student to student. It's really interesting to do the virtual group work and preparation on there. Students really grumble at group work at the very beginning, but because the web conferencing is pretty easy to do, they actually do start to enjoy it, because they can do their group work in their pajamas. They don't have to leave and go outside. So that actually is very, very helpful. So those are the three ways that we're going to take a look at it. The chat discussion, and we can do this, but I know Amy mentioned this before, of what your experience was with video conferencing. And I know, Veronica, you mentioned something about your experiences, but if you could, what are your experiences? The rest of the group, you can type out in the chat board over here on the side. Do you have a lot of experience with it, or are you comfortable with it? Is it something that you're just beginning with, or maybe do you use it all the time? Far too many meetings, Matt. I know. I agree. Sometimes there are too many meetings. And Suzanne, you use it for meetings too? Oh, you know what? Interesting, Amy. Veronica mentioned that she's been using it for office hours, but hasn't been really successful with it. So there's a little trick possibly that we're going to show in a few minutes that maybe you can do to make it more workable for you. Okay, we have meetings. Yeah, David, struggling to make a class after work. Oh, exam reviews, wonderful, and an intro. Wonderful, wonderful. Quite new. You've been a participant but not leading it. Never used it. Open question time, but it's lowly attended. Yeah. Sometimes too, with my child, optional is not optional for homework. And I know I can do that in the elementary school level, but at the college level, you can highly suggest or highly recommend that it would be useful for them to actually use that time. So a lot of different ways that you've been using it, and open office hours. Great. They always want individual help. Yeah. And especially too, Robin, I'm not sure exactly what campus that you are on. I don't remember from before. But sometimes too, being in at a larger campus with a larger class, okay, it's nice to actually have that better rapport with the instructor. Very good. Okay. So there's a lot of different functions that you can do for the web conferencing. Amy also touched base on this. If you were able to participate in our first e-learning experience, there was the text chatting. Also, we did a little bit of polling. You're noticing right now we're looking at some PowerPoint, sharing some notes. Amy's going to share some files and do a couple exciting things with you a little bit later. Sharing files. She's sharing a file right now that I have access to, but then I can also, and she can share it with other individuals too. We can also do screen shares. So it's really good if you want to, if you have a file that you really want the students to take a look at, but for some reason they don't have access to it or they can't find it, or it might be something that you just decide that you want to add as a supplement to the class that day. It's really very helpful. And then also too, we just have that audio and that webcam. So it's really nice to see those individuals too. Even though you have phone office hours too that they can phone in, it's really nice to actually look at the students. Okay. Well, here is what we were talking about. So Amy, if you wanted to also, you can add into, but this is one of the tips that you could do for course-wide. If you're not really requiring sessions for your students, you can really take a look and see what date and time is actually best for the class. So she gives an example here. We give an example here, and we're pretending that this is Amy. She's used this for her other course that she teaches. But what date and time is going to be best? And this is through a doodle poll. And if you're familiar with the doodle poll, they're very quick and very easy to do. And really, it takes a very short period of time to get that out and get that information back to you. So that's one tip. If you're not requiring sessions, you can see what date and time it is good for the students. Amy, do you want to move forward? And then also too, you can record those sessions and then you can place it on Box. And I know that some of you are using Box, some of you put all your files on Canvas, but you can put a lot of your materials in this holding space as Box.
And I'm going to jump in, and maybe Matt knows more because I think he's on the committee. Is eventually there will be an online storage platform for videos. So this is a temporary placeholder. I don't know if before people have heard of MediaCore that went away. Penn State was a subscriber to that until about 2 years ago when it was no longer for higher education purposes. So more to come for that.
I have a quick question, if I can interrupt.
Sure.
So basically, so if we do record the session, then I can still put it in Canvas, right? And just as a link in my Canvas pages, that's still okay? Okay.
Yeah. So if you do this on a pretty regular basis, and depending how long your recordings are, it could take up your Canvas space because you have a limitation of that. So that's why if you're only doing it maybe 2 or 3 times a semester, then it would be okay. But if not, then that's why it's really good to use something else such as Box and then link to it in Canvas.
And then if I use Box and link to it, do I have to share that folder with the students, or would the link just work?
The link would just work, so you can share the link.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay. This is another thing, and Amy, maybe you want to describe this because this is really important as during the setup, the precursor before you're actually having this. So if you want to talk about the course-wide tip about the session requirements.
Yeah, so one thing is if you are requiring students to come at a certain time, and this does happen, I know in the Northeast they have some marketing courses where everybody has to log on Wednesdays at 6 o'clock at night. Make sure that you work with your registrar and list it accordingly. So the W identifies that it is an online course, that they don't have to physically come to campus, but then also make sure that you do put the date of the week and the time that they would have to log in. So I know that we have David, who's the expert with the Digital Learning Initiative, so he could chime in here too. But here is just the instructional codes, but your registrar would know and be the most appropriate point of contact before you go forward. So I know David's going to chime in here, and then we'll pass it back to Marilyn.
Yeah, there's some changes under discussion about how to code the courses to make them visible as shared courses. Right now, I'm asking everybody when they're doing any types of course sharing, put that in the Digital Learning Cooperative. For courses that are live meeting using the web room. The room descriptor as web instead of classroom or TBA is something we're asking people to do, and then putting a meeting time. And so Trifina, who works in the Office of the University Registrar, is about to communicate back out to all the registrars and schedulers to say, when you're using some sort of live tool like Zoom or other type of live virtual meeting, you should be using the word web for the room, and then put a meeting time in there. For courses that we have, maybe people do self-paced asynchronous activities. The current practice is to use web with no meeting time, and that tells the student that there is no requirement to be somewhere at a certain time.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Amy. One thing too, with the WB and the WR, new faculty are not familiar with what those are, and working with a few new faculty, I've had to explain to them what those particular course codes actually are. So if you have any new faculty coming, something as simple as that really isn't simple to them. They're a little confused by what exactly that means. So please share. So the last particular course-wide tip, number 4, is if you're requiring sessions, but it's not listed in MyNPath, try to hold those students responsible. And I love this photograph, the image that Amy chose for this, because we do kind of have to dangle something out there just a little bit to make sure that they contribute and that we know that they've actually watched or read or done what we've actually asked them to do, especially. So if we are requiring them, including a secret password during a recording, where we have to make sure that they have that so that we know that they've actually attended. You might provide them with a quiz. Then that particular information for that particular quiz might not have been anywhere else except the content that you're actually talking about. You can also do some postings onto the discussion board to really interact with what they were supposed to have watched. And then also too, students could post questions about it. This is up to you whether this is something that you want to use, but these are ways to kind of get around because we want to make sure that students are held accountable for watching, because we don't want to do where they come in and they don't have any questions, but we know that they might not have actually watched something. And then they'll wonder why they might not have done very well on the test. So the content that you might have been talking about is something that you would assess. Okay, Amy. This is the little trick that Amy likes to do. She also likes to do the doodle poll. So really, if you give those students the opportunity to really poll them to see what the best time of day the day and the time is best for them. Getting their input is going to help so much more. We learned that the hard way with one of the faculty that I've been working with. Nobody really was able to come to his office hours, so we were able to make some changes, and now he has much more participation with them because he works through shared programs across multiple campuses, so it does actually help. And it could be something very simple with just a few options, depending on what your course teaching schedule is. And then also too, if you would rather do more one-on-one with the students, you can also have the students sign up for a specific slot in advance, and then they have the ability to meet with you.
Yeah, and I'm going to chime in here. There also is a way within Canvas to do this, to sign up for a one-on-one time slot. It's called Canvas Scheduler. It's underneath the calendar option, and so we'll include that as a link as well in the follow-up. So you could do the sign up for the one-on-one tip there. And then two, go ahead, Veronica.
Oh, I'm sorry. I've used actually You Can Book Me.
Okay,
because
yeah.
it automatically goes into, and I'm actually toying with now, like Sign Up Genius, I think is another one that a colleague of mine in English told me about. Because like for my doodle polls, it seemed like they would lose the link unless I had it in like my signature. So I've tried. So now I'm looking at You Can Book Me. I mean, that works pretty. Like I tried to use the Starfish for the advising, and then the You Can Book Me. And now I'm looking at Sign Up Genius. I haven't used those yet, but a colleague of mine has, and she's been really helpful with those, just in case.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then one other tip here, going back to you, Veronica, for the office hours. Sometimes, again, if students, I know that not planning it and having Q&A is the best bet when it comes to office hours, what we think, but students tend to not show up for those. So I know it's a little bit backwards, but if you say, hey, we're going to have yes, we are going to have the online office hours, but if there's no questions, then I'm going to hold a brief recitation session on topic X. And that really encourages students to come. So when faculty switch from that to actually covering something, you'll get a small contingent of about like 3-4 students each week, which is really helpful.
Thank you for sharing. And then the instructor to student tip number 3, in Zoom, we have the ability to hear that chime. But unfortunately, Amy and I we're just talking about this the other day, not in Canvas conferences. So again, you need to be aware of who's coming in and out of the room. And you'll notice in Zoom that you have, depending on where your strip of individuals are, the talking heads at the top. We see all of you, but we still have to scroll through. So you just want to make sure that you have notice of who actually is in the room with you.
And this is one of the shared programs faculty really wanted this feature because she wasn't going to have formal sessions, but saying, hey, you could pop in, but she wanted to say, hey, if nobody shows up, I could still do something else, such as grading. So that's why it was really important to have a chime. So it was like a ding dong, like, hey, somebody's here. Let me stop what I'm doing and focus on whatever student is here.
Perfect, thank you. And this is another thing also too that Amy and I talked about, and this is one of her examples from one of her classes, but this is student tip number 4. So if you are having one-on-one office hours, you really can give them some feedback and some information so that then as you meet with them, you can pull up their document. They can share what they were thinking and what you were looking for as you were grading it. So it is really important too, because it's so easy to share files and it's so easy to work back and forth with the students that they can review it before they come and see you. And then if they have any questions about how it was graded or any comments, it's going to be much more helpful. And the same thing too, if they're on step 2 of a project, and you want to give them a little bit more feedback of the avenue that they're going. This also will help very much so by giving them that one-on-one. Okay. Now, instead of actually using this poll that I was going to do on Slido, I actually Amy and I were talking a little bit. We'd like to kind of show you something a little bit differently. And we're giving you a quick quiz here. And remember, you got to think way back when you were learning about computers.
Or you never learned about computers. So it's okay to get this wrong, but we wanted it to change the question into something a little bit more about a topic, because when you poll your students, it's really quizzing them. So when you're doing a poll, there's no way to mark a right answer. So you have to verbally state it, but we just want you to participate in a poll, and it's okay if you get it wrong.
Or good. Someone doesn't know. That's good. We have a little bit of different data there.
Okay. So now we have 100% who responded. So I'm going to end the poll, and I'm going to share the results so that way you could see it. So it actually highlights in orange the most frequent response, which actually is the correct one. So a RAM is temporary, volatile, meaning once you turn off the computer, it wipes it out. And then ROM is the counterpart, that's what's permanent and non-volatile. So this is just one example that you could do. And then with polling, you do have to verbally indicate the correct response because it's not quizzing, it's not like clickers, it is a poll.
Okay. Do you want to talk real quick about where we created this from?
Sure. So I'm going to exit out of here. And so with a poll, you might say, oh, well, how do I do that? We actually will be covering that later on. But all I had to do is click on polling towards the bottom and then enter the question text along with the answer responses.
Okay, so it's included right within Zoom, but there is poll everywhere. There's other types of quick polling programs that you might have already used before, but we'll give you all of that information, and including this in a little bit. Thank you, Amy, for sharing that. And I got to close my poll out here too. So the student to student tips, again, you can suggest tools that you'd like your students or that your students can actually use. Give them the pluses and the minuses, the pros and the cons of using each one. You also want to make sure, do they know how to use the tools before they get started on something? You might also be using the tools in your classroom, so go over them in advance. And then also to give them that information in the syllabus or have a specific spot on Canvas that provides support information for them. Okay, and then I'm going to send you over to our next section, and I'm going to do it, but I'm also going to have Amy chime in here a little bit too, because like I said, this is, I think, one of her most exciting things. She loves to do the interactivity and engagement with the students, so we're hoping that her excitement kind of rubs off on you all a little bit so they can use in your classroom. So the next thing is how. So what preparation do you have to have? How are you going to be conducting the sessions, and then also the follow-up pieces? So this is very similar if you attended the previous first e-learning session that we had. We're creating that PowerPoint in advance, or the documents that we're going to be using in advance. Amy did send something out in an email, provided you with access to the information before so that you were prepared. We've also added some interaction types of slides. So we did the poll, we did working with the chat, and then you also want to, during your planning process of your course, your instruction, is identify where you want to interact with your students. What polls do you want to create? What information do you really want them to know instead of just looking at you? Give them, see if they can give you that feedback, very quick formative assessment. And again, to have that backup plan, because technology isn't 100% foolproof. So you're always going to have an issue that you might not expect. So always have that backup plan. And then two, we want to make sure that they know if there are any problems. And we also want to make sure too that we know that they have the ability to troubleshoot. So we can provide some technical support information. And then you can also practice with the students, do kind of a dry run with them, which is really important to make them feel comfortable, and then also make you feel comfortable with it too. Okay. Depending on the tool, Amy mentioned something, and I never really thought about it until she mentioned it at the first e-learning session, because everybody's monitor is a little bit different, but it's that square or that rectangular shape of your slides. You'll notice that sometimes when you put slides on, depending on what your monitor is, you could have the bleed over into the empty space that's around it. It could actually be cut off. So we really want to make sure that you're presenting and using the correct, either a square or that rectangle slide shot whenever you're presenting. Also using a PowerPoint or using that portable document format. The PDF is really good. Slide transitions, you really want to try to avoid those because they can be very, very distracting as you're working through them. And they also might not work the way that you might want them to work. They might seem a little bit odd as you're transitioning. But then we also want to make sure that we have some type of white space or some type of border around it. We don't want any of our text or images to go off of the screen. Okay. Amy, again, we practiced what we talked about. So we wanted you to join at least 15 minutes prior to the session, or 10 minutes or 5 minutes sometimes. But usually if you're the host, you're going to be starting it about 15 minutes before. And you want to make sure that you have that how-to slide like she had on there, with checking video, checking audio, and how to actually check it. And then also too, the interaction with informally with students. So she called you by name, and she was able to interact and make sure that everyone was situated. So it was very nice to demonstrate that also. And then as you're conducting the session, you want to make sure that there are microphone checks. She mentioned, hey, we're recording, just to let you know. Some people immediately turn off their screen so that they don't get recorded and have video of themselves. Also too is making eye contact. It's very easy to look at your screen or to look at something else that's around you by making eye contact. And then also to checking in with the students. Can they hear you? Can they see you? Can they see the content? You might notice that some students don't move at all when they're sitting there. So are they daydreaming? So just making sure that they can hear you and that you're getting some feedback from them. And then also too, we want to see, can we grab and bring their attention in to you? Because you want them to just be as excited about accounting and health and business management and all your other content as you are, by using a lot of these different types of ways to engage them a little bit differently. And this is one of my favorites, is making that eye contact. If you have been one of those faculty that has been through Polycom, you've done web conferencing, you've been recorded, you know sometimes it's very easy to not make eye contact with other individuals. So if you could have something on the cameras in your room, or even have something up on your monitor so that you can look at and talk to, that also will help, so that you're not looking down and not looking anywhere else. Okay. And then towards the end, make sure that your students stay to the end. We know sometimes that life sometimes interferes with school. So we want to make sure that they know, in case you are providing any appointments, you are giving them additional information. You also might have a Q&A afterwards, and you might want them to actually post something, read something. Make sure that you stop recording, because it can go on and on, especially if you have a student that stays behind maybe and they want to chat a little bit more. But also don't forget to download the chat, and then also download your recording for Zoom so that you have it. And if anybody does have any difficulties with that, there are some technical supports that you can do to actually assist you in finding out where in the world did my download go, which does happen sometimes. Okay. Any questions on anything that we talked about?
Yeah, I have a question. Do you know about how long you have to wait online for the download of the session to save to your hard drive? Do you have any Is it 15 minutes per hour of a Zoom session? Any rule of thumb?
So in my experience, I've done Wi-Fi, and for about an hour-long session, it is about 5 minutes in duration. But again, that's really dependent upon your computer speed, if you have a wired connection versus wireless. And two, I know that some people do Zoom during class in front of students for maybe connecting a student who is like in the hospital or something. With that, make sure that you have enough time before the next instructor comes in. So maybe Zoom and recording on a laptop would be better than the desktop instructor station. So that's something to be cognizant about.
I never thought of that. That's a really good question, Matt. Thank you. But whenever I've done it, it has not taken very long. And again, it's that length of time. How long are you actually going to be recording? So thank you. Thank you for asking. Okay. Anything else? Okay. Well, we're going to move on through.
Yeah, so just quickly kind of wrapping up, after the session, after you concluded it, make sure that you post the recording, and then if you are requiring students to watch it, talk about creating that quiz or something that we had beforehand. And then two, point students to the recording, have an announcement or an email and Canvas, just to make sure that they go to where they're supposed to appropriately.
And Amy will also have that. That's why she took the last slide, because she's going to be able to get that together, and then you'll be getting another email from her giving you some more information. So I'm going to move it over and let Amy begin with the engagement of students. So thank you.
Yeah, so I told you we'd spend at least half the time focusing on engaging students, and that's what we're all about doing, and having you practice some of these things. So I know that these were mentioned before, is the annotation, some of those check-in questions. And so with different things, you could also have chat, which we did do a chat session already. We already had a polling during today. And then we're going to focus on a tool called Whiteboard Activities. I experienced this also as a grad student over a decade ago, but then really having those, having everyone have the opportunity to write on the whiteboards, etc. And then we'll go over those advanced features, such as the screen share takeover and the student breakout room. So first step is, for each of these instructional strategies, we're going to be going over what is it, how to use it, giving an example of use, and then we'll let you take a turn. So our first one is annotation. I know that we've used it sporadically during today's session, and it's a tool that you could do anytime while you are screen sharing. So I know right now we're screen sharing a presentation right now, and as part of this, one is focusing on some of the content, and so there are many different color options, and we'll have you take a turn in a second. But for this example, the instructor, hold on one second. The instructor did some circling down here. They did some highlighting of what angles you're supposed to do. And then what this is here is actually a focus point. So with annotation, you could do what's called a spotlight, and then you could have certain arrows, and it puts your name. So you could just kind of like a laser pointer, but a virtual laser pointer. You could just go and click and drag for that. So there's many different things.
I'm sorry. I mean, I think it's really funny too, because we get in the habit of pointing to our screen, and meanwhile the students don't even know what you're doing, because we get into that habit of pointing. So this is just a great way to actually be able to point, but so everyone can see it.
Yeah, and then another example, this is for a math course. She teaches it as a blended course during the fall and spring, but a completely online course during the summer. So during the fall and spring, she meets up for exam reviews, but during the summer condensed 6-week session, she has and a live meeting where she goes over example problems. So with this, it's really hard to draw on the computer mouse. So she actually connects via an iPad that she has, and then uses a stylus, kind of like a pen, to draw. So it's more intuitive, and that way she's able to work through accordingly. And so one other example before we go to your turn is I do want to share a different screen. So give me 1 second. It didn't pop up. Let's try one more time. So I'm going to share Google Chrome. So this, in case, like, let's say you want to show how to do something in a online textbook, and so you could actually show that. But what is really nice is then you could annotate directly on the web page. So you could say, okay, like, make sure that you pay attention to the how-tos and the images. And so you could literally write on the web page. And so with that, that's neat that you could write on anything. It's not just PowerPoint. So that's just one example. So I am going to go back to sharing the PDF, and you should, I could be wrong, but you should have control to actually annotate. So if not, I'm going to maybe promote everybody.
We should see something at the bottom, right? Of
Yeah.
Zoom, is that it?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so I just still see like the participants, the share, the chat, and the record. I'm supposed to see something else?
Yes, so you're supposed to see annotate, but just in case you don't, okay, so give me 1 second and then I will up.
Amy, there, if you go up, if you move your mouse, if everybody moves their mouse towards the top of the screen, you'll see a thing that says you're viewing Amy Kuntz's screen, and there's view options to the right of that. If you click on that little drop down, there's an annotate.
Okay, thank you so much, Suzanne.
Sure, sure.
So now you could actually draw, and so this is a free-for-all, but just for you to practice.
This is fabulous.
And then from there, you can see that you can change the colors. There's different font sizes, and I know some people did the spotlight. And then you do have text. So if you type the text and click someplace and you type, that way it's a little bit more formal. So there are the different aspects. So I just want you to play around. We'll give everybody a minute or two. And if you have any questions, please feel free to type that in the text chat. And so sometimes for online sessions, if it's a more formal classroom, you might say, hey, it's time for a break, but then let them draw on here. So you can have something very informal too, although this is for you to practice for maybe writing on a PowerPoint, writing on a page that you're sharing on the internet, etc.
So how do I get back if I started to mess around with the draw with the arrows and stuff? How do I what do I click? Oh, I got it. Sorry.
Yeah, so then when you're done, and to go back, you actually have to click on the mouse button in the annotation bar. So compared to other tools, Zoom is a little bit clunky when it comes to annotation compared to others. So it does require a bit more practice compared to other products such as Blackboard Collaborate.
Hey, Amy, are you allowed as the host to erase what we did?
Yeah.
Like I can only erase mine, but
yeah. So as a host, you could actually clear just yours, if in case you wanted to keep your students, or if you wanted to clear everybody's, you could do that. So that's what I'm going to do next. So I'll give everybody 5 more seconds.
And I think too, you need to create a little bit of guidelines for some of your more mischievous students.
Yeah.
I think you always have one, just to let them know, what the expectation is. But it's good too. It's just a different way, instead of typing, that they have the ability to experiment a little bit, because you never know, they might want to use this in their group work when they do their own group conferences.
Yeah, and we'll do a more formal aspect of students doing annotation in a second. So that for you doing your own annotations, that's kind of one step. And then a second way is check-in questions. And so Matt said, would you be one of the bad students, Marilyn? Maybe.
No, but I think you might be. I see some mischievous smiles up there too in the bar with everyone. Yeah.
So a second way is check-in questions. And so a lot of times people say, okay, well, does that make sense? If so, press the green check mark. If not, press the red X. And so you could do others, such as, are there any questions? Yes or no. Can you hear me now? Yes or no. Can you see what I'm seeing? But this is a newer tool. So in Zoom, you actually have to have this setting checked on. So I actually have that. So you should be able to see if you click on participants in the bottom, you'll see a list of everybody, but towards the bottom area of the participant list, you'll see this yes, no, go slower, go faster. And then if you click on more, you get some quirky things like the thumbs up, thumbs down, clapping, coffee, or the clock is to the timer is supposed to say that you stepped away for a second. So if you guide your students to do that, then you could see if they're there or not, and then you could clear them all. So I'll give everybody about 15 seconds to go click on participants, and then at the bottom of the participant list, then you'll have this bar right here that has yes, no, go slower, go faster. That if you want to click on one of those, great. And coffee. So, okay, so I'm going to clear all of them and we're going to keep moving on forward. Oops. And so chat discussions, we have already had 2 of them. And so for this, it's one where you could either just verbally state something, or if you planned ahead, you could actually have the question on the slide, so that way you don't have to repeat it in case students weren't paying attention or don't remember all aspects of what you're asking them. So one example is, what electronic devices are connected to your home computer network? What do you hope to add in the next 5 years? So students kind of collaborate and write their own responses. And then 2, a good benefit is to then monitor the text chat and then use the annotation tool to type some of the highest common things. So we'll have you do this in a second, but to show you what it looks like, as here is going back to the ergonomics one that we had the slide before, is what kind of office equipment is at your place of work, where you study. And you can see that Iona put, where I work, we have older tables and chairs, so I have a standard office chair that is over 15 years old and it does not adjust. And then Katrina said, in the place where I study, the chair has an adjustable seat height, but due to the table being so low, you cannot sit in a comfortable ergonomic position. So even for me, I know I keep moving up and down because I need a better chair. So there is that, and that's an example text chat question and how to do that. So, and now it is your turn. In the text chat, I want you to type in a question or 2 that you would ask your class using the chat strategy. So think of something. I know that you could also verbally respond, but let's say you have 30 students online. You don't want all of them to take a turn to speak, which is why the text chat is a nice feature. So I'll give everybody about 30 seconds. Okay, great. So then with this, I typed in some of the most common answers, and that way it is in the PowerPoint going forward. So we have some great examples. For Xialing said icebreaker questions during the beginning. Suzanne said reading strategy. A lot of people talked about muddiest points, such as Matt, as well as Karen and Veronica, which is in Maryland, how to, what's confusing so far and how to address it right away. And then two, talking about the news. So for Kim and Robin, they said how to make it relevant to what is going on in class and make it relatable. So really great questions, and thank you for that. So before we go forward, is there any questions with the annotation or the yes, no questions or the chat? Because these are kind of the easiest of the different things. No, you're all experts. That's great. So then now we're moving into a little bit harder is polling. So it really is dependent upon the tool. For Zoom, it does have that built-in polling, but you either have, it's all multiple choice. Either they have one single answer or you could select multiple answers. So they call it single answer or multiple choice, but they're all choosing. There's no free response. So you can set it up ahead of time, which is recommended, instead of saying, hey, wait, let me create a poll, and then wasting about a minute typing in the question and the answer choices. It's really nice to show the results. And just like clickers, you could, yes, you could just see what students know, but you could have a conversation around it. If a majority of students selected the wrong response, you could have a conversation as why they think it was that way before revealing that they were incorrect. And then because it is polling, it's not clicker based, you do have to verbally identify the correct answer. So I know that we talked a lot about alternative polls, and if you're interested, we could talk offline about that. But it does add a little bit of level of complexity since you have to switch back and forth to one more thing. So as I mentioned before, for the poll that we did, I had to click on polls at the bottom and click on create a poll. And then what you have to do is just type it in, and you choose either single choice where students can pick one answer choice, or multiple choice where they choose more than one answer. So you can add as many as you want. It's not limited to 4 or 5. You actually have a bunch. And then as far as launching a poll, what I did was clicked on polling. Then for slide number 2, part number 2, from there I clicked on, whoops, come on. I clicked on launch a poll, and then I saw the results in real time. And then when I was done, I pressed end poll. So that's how I did the polling aspect. And so since we already participated in a lot of polls, we're not going to do this just for time's sake, so we get to some of the others. So whiteboard activities. This is something that really engages students because yes, you have polls and you can type in the text chat and you could talk, but it has them writing on that whiteboard area versus talking and typing. So I want to provide some examples and then we'll give you another opportunity. So one example is where you create a little table in PowerPoint and assign students a particular area. So then Jane might type in number 1, John might type in number 2, etc. And if some of you are like, oh, that's really neat, but I don't want to take the time to set it up, well, we have you. In the slides, we have a template that you could use. So this is just one example. So one is a free-for-all where you could synthesize answers, which is what we already did. The downside to that is you could overwrite, and students tend to write over top of one another. You could also have a vote. So yes, you could say, hey, if you're click on yes or click on no and the interactions that we saw, but you could say, hey, plus a checkbox next to the category and just have them right on there. So they tend to like that a lot. It gives them something different, a little bit of stimuli outside of the content that they like. And then lastly is that question that I talked about where they are assigned a particular number and they type in their response or handwrite it if they so wish. So here we do want to take time for you to answer. And so I am going to go through and assign each of you one of these. Marilyn and David, I'm going to skip you. So please feel free to go ahead. So for number 1, Karen, if you want to type in box number 1, Kim, if you want to type in box number 2, Matt Bodak, if you want to type in box number 3, Megan, if you want to type in box number 4, Robin and Selena, since I don't know if you want to have 2 unique answers, so Robin, I'll give you 5, and Selena, I'll give you number 6. Suzanne, I'll give you number 7. Veronica, number 8. And Xiling, number 9. So with that, please either just type whatever you want, or how do you plan to use desktop video conferencing, maybe for office hours, in case of a snow day, etc. So again, you should have the annotations. If not, then you hover and then go over to options like Suzanne had mentioned, and then you'll see the annotation aspect. Okay, great. So we have some fantastic ideas, and it really is to get your brain around all the possibilities. But the most common tends to dabble in the cancellation and snow days and office hours. So that's probably the best bet going first, and then from there, especially for online courses for undergraduate students, they really like having the opportunity to meet up in real time. If you're talking about a particular area, not so much like bring your questions, but if you come with a purpose, then they're more apt to be there. So thank you so much. I'm going to clear your responses for now, and then we're going to move on. So our next one, we're moving now into harder aspects. These are more advanced. So you could actually have a screen takeover. So you could actually have somebody take over your computer and manipulate it. So you might say—
Now you're laughing now, so I worry about what that's going to mean here, Amy, with this group.
Yeah, so some examples of why you would want to do this is have an example student paper, and have students identify grammar or maybe something to change in the paper, showing steps of a process, and have the students do the next step. It's even for like math problems, or you would typically have them write on the board and then get somebody else to do it. And then 2, you could assess if students can do a particular item or solve an issue. So depending upon your discipline, it may or may not be pertinent. Just for simplicity's sake, I am going to share Excel, and I'm going to ask for a brave volunteer who wants to take over my computer. So if you want to raise your hand or type in the text chat while I share this. And I'm just going to share Excel, so that way it's not everything. Oops, I think I shared everything. Give me 1 second. So we have no brave volunteers?
I can do it. I love Excel. It's my
Okay.
home. What do you want me to do?
So all I have to do to give permission to Veronica is have her, come on. Hold on 1 second.
Oh, okay. Since you picked my favorite program in the whole wide world, you know.
Come on. It's not letting me do it.
Oh, that's just rude.
I can make you a host, but it's supposed to
Oh,
say,
should I click on top where it says view options, request remote control? Is that what I need to do?
that is a workaround, but I'm supposed to be able to give that directly to you. So that would be perfect if you want to do that.
Okay, so I did that, and then I hit request, and let's see if that works.
So now you're approved, and now you are controlling my computer. So this is
Oh,
Veronica
fantastic.
doing
Oh,
the
I love it.
fabulous formulas.
I love my formulas. Yeah, they're easy. Oh, so we're gonna. Oh, that's so cool. I like that. And then everybody in the Zoom room can see this, right?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So if you type in a cell and put Veronica, then we'll see that it's you. So I'm not doing anything. I'm hands up here.
Awesome.
So again, this is a little bit harder, a tricky aspect, but you could see that depending upon your area.
And when I created the formula, do you guys see that? Because then I can definitely, oh yeah, you could see that I'm doing the sum of. Oh, this is delicious. Okay.
And then for me as an instructor, if I say, okay, I want control, so then, or give it to somebody else, then I have an option of remote control at the bottom and click on stop remote control, or I could give it to somebody else. So I know that Marilyn mentioned that she was willing to do it, so I'm going to switch them.
No, actually, I'm looking up in the thing, and Karen was very interested in it, I thought.
Good.
And then also the KXT, and I cannot remember your first name. I apologize.
It's Kim. So Karen, I'm going to switch things over to you. So now Karen's controlling it. So now just move the computer mouse and type away.
So quick question, Amy. So instead of, because this is actually exactly what I need to do for, like, I guess for some of my Excel tutorials. So if I do this and I record it and it shows the information, then that's like a workaround, right? So it sees all the formulas and everything, and I can record the whole screen. Oh, fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah.
Think of corrections though, too, when you want the students to identify, you know, if there's an error here, can you identify the error? Or, you know, how can we adjust this, especially if it's like a written paragraph or something, maybe you have a writing course or something. So there's a lot of potential for this. It just is getting it to work the way we want it to work sometimes.
I think this will be a great workaround for some of my challenges with like Google Docs and stuff like that. So I didn't know we could do this. So and it's perfect because in that class it's writing intensive. So, and we need a little bit of help there. So I think this is fantastic. I'm excited. Sorry.
No, it's okay. So now that Karen had a turn, I'm going to switch it over to Kim. So Kim, now you have control of the computer. Well, Excel. And so what's nice is if you're sharing your entire computer, they could get access to your entire computer. But like me, I don't want them peeking around different areas. So if you only want to share one Excel document, or maybe you have a pre-made Excel document or PowerPoint or Word or anything, or just sharing Google Chrome, you could do that and share.
There you go. You answered your own question, Kim.
Good. So I think just for time's sake, I'm going to request back the control, and now it's going to be me. And I'm going to stop sharing and then go back to our presentation. But thank you for everybody for being the brave volunteer. So just to double check, can everyone see the presentation now? Okay, great. So we already did the your turn aspect for screen share takeovers. So our last topic of the day is student breakout rooms. So this is the equivalent of being in a class and having 30 students and you break them out into 6 groups of 5, where you could actually go around the room into each group. You could literally peek into the room as well. So some examples of why you would want to do this is to have those small group discussions and have them report out, have a think, pair, share activity, have students an opportunity to prepare for a class presentation. So you could assign the groups. It's not just random. It could be random, or it could be a way where you force certain groups of students together. So with this, because it's a little bit more difficult, some things to consider is do a low stakes one first and have a backup plan. Have an opportunity to practice. So if you want Marilyn and I to join you and have us be in our own breakout rooms, we're happy to do that. Announce to students that a breakout room is going to happen and what to do if they get kicked out or something happens to come back to the link that you had provided to join Zoom in the beginning. You could also, that first time, a link to technical issues. That one, not as much. I think it's pretty straightforward once you get used to it. And then when you're doing this, make sure to peek in each room if possible. And then bring back everybody together. And then before you start up again, ensure that everyone can see you or hear you. So is there any questions about that before we actually start to do a breakout room? So what functionality is in the breakout room? Good question. So maybe it's best learning by doing, but you could, you do have the chat available, the video, and talking. So that's a good question, Suzanne. So we are going to have breakout rooms right now, and I want you to think about and share what activity presented today did you like the most and why, and which one did you like the least and why. And we are going to come back. So make sure that, I moved that. So before you do anything else, make sure that you do come back and do everything accordingly. So any questions before we do this? Going once, going twice. Okay, so in order to do this, I have to click on that bottom bar. There is a more area, and then there is breakout rooms. We are going to do it automatically because it's faster. But again, you can manually assign rooms. In case we wanted Veronica with Xiling, we could force that to happen. But there is a way where we could say, hey, we just want 9 participants broken out into 3 rooms, choose as you wish. And that's what we're gonna do right now. So again, we are gonna come back, so make sure that you don't leave. And in case you do have a class, that is perfectly fine, and thank you so much. Oh, Robin had a question. So in the bottom, if you are the host, there, the bottom bar next to manage participants and chat, there is another one that says more with ... But since you're not the host, then it's not there. So great question.
Robin, I didn't see that.
Okay, so here we are going into the breakout rooms. And then Robin, if you're still here, you should have gotten a pop-up window that said join room. So if you click on that, then you'll join breakout room 3.
In our breakout.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
we've
see
done that.
4.
My teacher's here.
Hi, peeking in.
Oh,
So I just wanted to show you the feature that we are able to go into each room. But since you're the more advanced people, I'll let you be and I'll pop into a different room.
Okay. Wow.
Hi.
Looks like we could record too. So if somebody really wanted to have us record our conversation, we could do it. You know, if you wanted to see if we were really.
Discussion report
Yeah.
back, kind of like you would do in a traditional classroom as well.
Hi, everyone. I'm
Hi.
into your group. So,
So we can only do the voice via the camera. We cannot do chattings when we're in the break room, right?
you're supposed to be able to do the chat in the small group area.
Oh, because when I
But
click
it
on the
seems
chat,
like it's
it
going
just-
to everyone.
it is going to everyone.
Yeah.
Typing is to everyone or either to single group member. This is why I'm asking.
Yeah, so the workaround is not the best, but if you bring up the chat where it says, well, no, it is. So if you click on everyone, you'll see that it's only those that are in the room in this breakout group. So the interface is clunky and it seems like it's going to go to everyone, but it's going to everyone in this little cluster of people.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah. So we're thinking on the same page.
Yep.
Good. So I know that we're getting closer to 125. I don't know if anybody has anything else. I'm going to quickly go in the last group and then bring everybody back.
Amy, have you used the Canvas conference?
I have, yes. Yeah.
How do you feel about that one? Because I'm thinking about.
To me personally, I like that one a bit better for teaching formality purposes, because that way you share a PowerPoint, it's kind of pre-structured, similar to what Adobe Connect was. Zoom, it's nice and nimble and flexible, but sometimes it's hard to get it configured exactly how you want. Like if you want the presentation here and the list of the chat over here, it sometimes moves it around without you moving it for them. So I think it's better for some things and Zoom is better for other things, especially for video. Zoom is pretty much superior when it comes to video and audio. Good question.
Yeah. Sometimes I think about when we're using technologies, instructors have no problem using it because we rehearse it several times before we implement it.
Yeah.
However, when we using it, students might have difficulty or they might have trouble doing it. That's my concern.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what's the nice thing is with Zoom and Canvas conferences, there is that support available. There is kind of little how-to guides. And so that's a nice aspect.
Does Zoom has the live chat, something like IT help support, similar as the Canvas one?
Zoom does not. It's I forget what it is, but I'll look that up and we'll tell it to everybody when we get back together. So good question. But for now, I'm going to quickly pop out and then bring everybody back.
The potential over there. Oh, we knew you'd be popping in.
Just real quick, because I know that we're getting close to 125. So we're going to, Suzanne asked for help. So I'm going to join their breakout room and then bring everybody back.
Okay, we're just.
Through like my first IRB with Penn, and it's like killing me. Hi.
Suzanne asked for help.
We did.
Did that ping you? 'Cause that
It
was
pinged
even
me and it
dead.
said, Suzanne asked for help. Join room 1.
All right. We
Oh,
did
that's
the best
awesome.
thing. Did you want us to come back, or are you going to pull us back?
Now we're going to pull everybody back.
Okay.
Cool.
We wanted to see what would happen.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're slowly getting back everybody to the main room. We'll give everybody a couple more seconds. Okay, so I think we're all here. Um, so hopefully you thought that was a good experience. It's always neat and interesting to practice. So does anybody want to quickly share out what they liked either the most and why, or the least and why?
I think Amy, Suzanne had a question about like if we, which was really awesome. If we actually in the breakout session, like say we shared screens and we annotated stuff, is that lost when we come back into the main room, or do we have to like tell the students, you know, something like we have to tell them to capture that somehow?
Yeah, so that's where it would be really good to like do Google Docs or something else. Annotations in general, even with Zoom overall, it's not meant to be like a document camera where it takes a picture of it. So that's what I would recommend. So thank you, Matt, for coming. I know that you have class. So with that, if there's any questions or comments, I do want to answer one thing. But again, these slides are available to you. And then we are going to add, if you weren't part of session 1, but are part of session 2, we're going to add you to a Canvas Pride, which is different from a course space. And so it does have all of the information, and we'll put the link to the recording. And that way you have the point of contact in case you forget Marilyn or myself our email addresses. So it will be called Shared Programs eLearning Series. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and share a website with you because Eileen had a great question of such as where do we go for help? What about students? Is there a 1-800 number like Canvas? So there is this website called conferencing.psu.edu, which is the main spot for Zoom. So from here you could log in, and then there is the Get Support option. And so from here you do have, and even students have the option to call and to chat live with people for Zoom. So that's really nice because if you're doing Canvas conferences, yes, there is the Canvas support that's there quickly right away. Zoom has that feature too, but then if you use other aspects such as on your own, such as Google Hangouts, you don't have that support. So I think this is one of the real benefits to using a Penn State supported tool.
One more thing, Amy, to add, with Veronica was mentioning, because the information goes away, it's only like a temporary type of thing in your chat room. Don't forget that you can also take a screenshot, and then at least you have something documented that your students were actually doing some kind of work within the session.
Yeah, and I know that Zoom does change, like makes little changes since it is web-based, kind of like Canvas. So Angel, it was big, huge changes once every couple of years. But with the technologies that we have with Canvas and Zoom, it's making these little changes each week. So I'll just double check that and send that as the follow-up. So I'm going to stop recording, but please feel free to stay here and ask any questions. And for those watching the recording, thank you so much.